What do you like about performing?
In the world, I kind of, throughout my life, I felt like a bit of an outsider. And so when I was on stage by myself, it felt like I was holding my own space and people were listening to me. And I didn't feel listened to often. So it felt like I've finally got a space to express myself and people are taking it in. And I think with my music as well, it's quite emotional and deep and there's a lot of depth to it. So I feel like often it's like the crowd is like silent and really taking in the lyrics. So yeah, having that space where I can speak and just be heard.
Hello and welcome to Working to Work Season 2. Working to Work is a project that explores the intersection of neurodivergence and employment. And in this second season, I'm focusing on neurodivergent creatives, looking at what challenges they in particular experience obtaining and maintaining gratifying work and also realizing their creative potential. I chose to focus on this primarily because it's the sector of employment that I have primarily worked in or sought work in, so it's one that I know well and one I'm particularly interested in. Throughout this season, I will be speaking with artists, musicians, people running organizations to support neurodivergent creatives. I hope to speak to politicians that are invested in supporting people with disabilities and the creative sectors. So there's a lot I'm excited about and I hope you'll join me on this journey. If you're listening on Resonance, thank you very much for listening, appreciate it. And if you're listening on the podcast feed, welcome. Please do follow the show to be notified when new episodes drop. And also, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, like the videos, share any comments you have. I'd love to hear from you. And your engagement helps grow the channel and further the projects. It's appreciated. Today, my guest is Shakira Alleyne. Shakira is an innovative autistic and ADHD musician, also works as an accessible music facilitator, and now is a filmmaker whose first film, Neurodiversity in Music Improving Access, seeks to explore the best practices, barriers, and next steps in supporting neurodivergent creatives. In this episode, I spoke with Shakira about how the film came about, Shakira's own journey as a musician, and how challenges with communication and conveying their needs and their creative vision led to overworking and effectively burnout and sort of falling out of love with producing music to an extent. We spoke about the organizations that Shakira's worked with and what made those that had a positive impact differently from others, and how Shakira's taking those learnings into their own work as a accessible music facilitator. We also spoke about the intersection of mental health and neurodivergence and how a greater understanding of oneself and understanding of neurodivergent differences was an empowering process to go through. So there's lots to cover, and Shakira has so much wisdom and insight to offer from years of striving for gratifying work and creative practice. It was a genuine pleasure to speak with her, and I hope that you also will enjoy the conversation as much as I did and that it resonates. And if it does, please do share your comments. I would love to hear them, and it definitely enriches the project to get that feedback. As always, I had a few technical challenges. The sound is a bit funky at times, and I got this new camera, which I struggled with the focus for, but I'll get there in terms of the technical aspects of this project. Fundamentally, the content is there, and that's what's most important. So again, please do follow, subscribe, keep listening, enjoy, and share any feedback that you have. Without further ado, here is my interview with Shakira Alleyne.
Okay, let's talk about the film. So your film is Neurodiversity in Music Improving Access, and it's a documentary exploring best practices, barriers, and the next steps in supporting neurodivergent creatives in the music industry / education sector. And for those interested, it's going to be shown at Rich Mix Cinema in Bethnal Green on the 20th of January. How did this come about, this film?
Yeah, so I've been working at Sound Connections for about just over a year. So they're a charity, a music charity, who basically work on making music education more accessible, working from like young right up to I think it's 25. I started this traineeship, which was based around, there was 2 of us accepted onto it, and it was based around building up our skills in order to be Wired for Music associates. So basically doing consultancy with them, like working on that. But as part of the program, we had these different aspects. So it was like training, shadowing, and one of the aspects was to do a research project. I was really like struggling to come up with an idea, and all I could really think of is like, when I hear the word research, I just think of like a report or something like that. So I was kind of thinking in those terms, and I just wasn't really getting anywhere. And then I remember one day I was like, oh, it could be really cool to do a documentary, and I've literally never filmed anything in my life before, but I just thought that would be so cool. Imagine doing that. I chose my research project to be around neurodiversity, so I always wanted that to be the topic. Even prior to starting at Sound Connections, I've wanted to create accessible music workshops and creating a resource to help people make like the workshops more accessible in that sense. Then the idea of the documentary came. I fed it back to my manager, and she was really supportive, and she was like, yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, you can definitely do that. And I was like, oh wow, okay, right. And now I've got like the budget and everything to do this, and so where do I begin? And I think I just began by having conversations with people, and that really showed me where there's certain barriers. I feel like I've been feeling alone with it. Like I've been feeling like, oh, I'm just, again, the outcast who's just the only one feeling this way. But the more I had conversations with like people that are like doing the same thing who are neurodivergent, the more I was like, oh wow, yeah, I'm not alone in this.
Amazing feeling, right?
Yeah.
It's very liberating.
Definitely. And it just everything just sparked from there. It was like people were bringing up things, and it was like, oh my God, yes, I've been trying to articulate that for so long, and I just didn't know how to articulate it. So then, yeah, I went on YouTube and searched like how to use this camera and hide out a camera and that kind of stuff. And yeah, just set up interview with some really great people and just spoke about their experiences. I really enjoyed the experience. I think having not done anything around film before made the whole thing fun. It just felt like, again, like how I felt when I first started making music, where it was just like, I'm just doing this and I'm experimenting, and it feels nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had some really great conversations.
How did you identify, like, or choose basically, like, who you wanted to talk to and why?
Yeah, so earlier in the year, I had done, for Sound Connections, they put on an annual event called Inclusive Practice in Action. And for part of that, I had done a panel on neurodiversity. And that kind of also gave me some ideas about like, okay, this conversation came up, so it'll be good to talk about that. And then one of the people on the panel, his name's Banji, I was introduced to him because he was looking for some advice, because my manager knew that I was autistic and ADHD, and he's autistic. So do I have any advice for him in terms of music, like maybe where he could go and that kind of thing? And so from speaking to him, that was another conversation where it was like, he has this passion, but he doesn't necessarily know where to turn. So I decided to base the documentary initially on Banji. So Banji's an artist, and he's sort of like starting out early stage. And I was like, it would be really good to have somebody from an organization. And so I contacted Attitude is Everything, because I had been on their Future Leader program before, and I knew that they were great in terms of inclusivity in the music industry. So I got B involved from there. And then Yasmin is a colleague, and with Yasmin, we're both neurodivergent, and we both went through this same experience of doing the traineeship. So it was like we were constantly like bouncing off ideas of each other, or constantly having conversations, and I think that really like helped. And so I was like, she definitely needs to be in there, because these are where the conversations sort of originated. And then finally Demet as well, who I met through just doing like a call out. So yeah, it's like a really nice range of people.
Yeah, what were some of the challenges you think people mentioned, and some of the things that they felt could mitigate them?
I think the biggest one that came up was like the barrier between knowing what you want and knowing what you can achieve. but then communicating that and getting the support for that. So with having like access requirements being met, but often it's a case where it's like that you'll ask your access requirements and you don't know what they are. So then that just sort of means like, okay, you don't get the help because you don't know how to articulate back. That was a really big thing. And having that conversation with those people in the documentary was like, yeah, this is like, for me, is like bringing stuff up for me as well. And I feel like some of the solutions offered was like, again, just seeing people as individuals and sitting down with them and working it out together.
Like maybe saying like, okay, where do you feel you struggled before? Seeing them like, what do you need? That like the step before offering the needs.
Exactly.
Let's help figure out what the things that you might need in this, as opposed to just let us know your needs. And then you're probably not going to do that work, or you might need someone to help facilitate you get to identifying what those things that support you.
Exactly. And some of them mentioned as a solution of like having a list of examples of what access requirements there might be. And also just letting people know what they can offer, because sometimes it can feel daunting to be like, oh, I'm working myself up to ask for this, but that might not even be a thing that's available. So that kind of thing.
I insist we've been waiting for this. Punctured lungs and purple eyes, we've crossed the line. Slaves to the mist, don't get caught in that shit. Acting out what they have burned upon your mind. And you know it shouldn't end here, but you really want the pain to end. You know it shouldn't end here. We got lost in the wave we did, and now we're going out the way we came in. Stuck in the water for ages, fading, lost in the wave we did, and now we're going out the way we came in.
How did you get started as a musician?
Yeah, so being a musician wasn't actually the goal. I've always been really into writing. So I used to write like short stories and poetry and that kind of thing. And then when I was around 16, I believe, 16, 17, I was having like a period of like really poor mental health, and I was in a mental health hospital. And just because I had so much time on my hands, I was given a guitar, and I just started to teach myself to play the guitar. And it was like more of a way of like having something to do at that point. Eventually, as I was getting more into music, like listening to music, kind of exploring genres that I hadn't really explored in secondary school, I was like, oh, okay, I could really combine the writing with the music kind of thing. So I started to do that just for myself. And then I started to go to this program. It was called Raw Material, a charity, and they had a course which was specifically for people experiencing mental health problems. And it was every week, and it was really like laid back. So you could go there, you didn't have to have a special set of skills or anything, just an interest in music and wanting to get involved, that kind of thing. And so yeah, I started going there and just really building on my skills. I should mention, before all of this, in secondary school, I have always loved rapping, but I never thought that it was something that I actually wanted to do. It was just something that I loved for myself. So then yeah, at Raw Material, I kind of just was combining like my love for rap with like this new experience of like learning the guitar, listening to more indie music and that kind of thing. And then there was like performance opportunities, and it was really nice. It was super laid back. It was mostly like friends and family, that kind of vibe. But it made me think, oh, this could actually really be something. Like, this self-expression is something that I hadn't experienced before, where for years and years I kept things so bottled up with inside. So it was almost like just a way to express myself. That was like a couple of years of just kind of enjoying it, messing around, that kind of thing. From there, I went to BIM. BIM is the British Institute of Modern Music. And I'd done a songwriting course, just a year's diploma. So I'd done the 1 year course, but it kind of took away the creativity for me. It was like, okay, it was interesting to learn the theory because I've always dabbled with piano as well. But it kind of felt so like anytime I was kind of creating, it felt like it was forced into a way that I had to fit it into a certain box. And for me, that's not really why I was making music. I never had the goal to be like, oh, I want to be this kind of artist or this kind of thing. It was just like, I want to express myself in this way. And then from there, shape that. So I did complete the course, but I think after that, I kind of stopped making music for a little while. I went to uni to do philosophy and English, which was completely the opposite thing. I didn't end up completing the uni degree because partway through that, I kind of got back into music again. And this time through just like, again, community programs. So I was like constantly just looking at where can I go to the studio, that kind of thing. And so I found the Roundhouse. Every year they've done a festival called Roundhouse Rising. 10 young musicians who want to create a song, get into a studio with someone they've paired you up with, like a producer, and over 3 days create, like record and produce a song for the Roundhouse Rising album. So I done that. I think that was in 2017. Yeah, 2017. And then from there, I was like, oh, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed just being in the studio, taking what I've created and just doing something with that. I've kind of missed out the fact that after I kind of went to Raw Sounds, I was referred to Amy's Yard, which was a program by the Amy Winehouse Foundation, taking a group of people, young people who are experiencing like difficult circumstances, whether that be like mental health, drug and alcohol, homelessness, that kind of thing. And what it was is that we would have different workshops. There's like lyric writing, performance, and the whole aim was over the course of a set period of time, we worked on a song of our choice with a producer again. And then at the end of that, we performed at the Amy Winehouse Foundation like annual gala. So that again was a really like an experience that made me think, oh, I really enjoyed this. Like I really had fun doing this, and it didn't feel like pressure in any way. It just kind of felt like a nice experience. Those kind of experiences kind of built a network of people who work in community charities like that and stuff. So at some point, I was offered free studio time by St. Mungo's, and I worked with a producer. I had written some songs and I was really exploring like how to create a sound for myself. And I feel like came with a sound that was unique to me, and it was just kind of expressing myself, but then also thinking like, how can I use the creativity to kind of make some form of artistry out of this? And I really enjoyed that process. I think what I struggled with, like being neurodivergent, which I didn't know at the time, is like communicating what I want. So it's like I would know the sounds in my head, but I wouldn't really know how to communicate that. And it became quite frustrating. Like
to the producer?
Yeah, to the producer. Or even when it came to like maybe doing artwork or the creative side of like putting things out. So like I released the EP, and I think in the end I just done like some photography myself, like because I find that I do that often when it comes to my music. I do a lot of it myself because it's like I'm really struggling to communicate how I'm picturing it in my head.
Or maybe there's also that what's potentially a bit more unique to neurodivergent people is having that total vision. So you know what you want, you see it as a whole package, right? You see the music and like the artwork. So yeah, it can be a challenge to articulate that, but at least you have that idea.
Exactly.
Right? And if you can find a way to do it yourself, that's great.
And interestingly, I do feel like I could see exactly how my ideas could play out and be something polished. And I do feel like even now, like I have lots of music that I haven't released because of that communication barrier. And I did actually learn to produce myself because I was having those issues with trying to like communicate. But then it just became exhausting because I'm trying to produce and write and like perform and then do like artist bio and all of this like press package and all this kind of stuff. It just became very overwhelming. So once I kind of got back into really like making music regularly, these were the things that I was kind of, I guess, struggling with, which started over time to make me feel like I was enjoying making music less.
Yeah.
I want to say, 2020, I joined a program called Future Bubblers, which was like an artist development program from Brownswood Recordings. And it was like right during lockdown. So we'd all met just before lockdown happened, and then lockdown happened. So it was like a lot of the stuff was like Zoom workshops and stuff, but we still did have the opportunity to have the network. And then also we done things like we recorded a session, like a live session. Each person got the chance to do that. And then what I really loved about it was the continued support. So after that like cohort ended, you was kind of called on for like festival performance opportunities, that kind of thing. And I would say in terms of music, that was the year for me where I really felt like this could actually be something. And I've got to a point where I'm producing music and I'm doing it regularly and I'm enjoying it. And I guess I had the time, but it's just that the opportunities that were coming sort of dispersed because of like isolation and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that was a really big year for me in terms of like feeling like I can't push past this. I don't have the momentum to push past, because it was like it got to the end of that year and there were so many great opportunities to collaborate with people that I've like dreamed of working with, and then they've kind of all dispersed, and it's like down to me to reach out. And this comes up a lot when it's like you go to all these events and they're like how to be an artist kind of thing, and it's like networking, but networking is really difficult for me. Like it's really, really difficult. And so just a bit of context, I was late diagnosed with autism and ADHD. So I've always kind of like struggled with social communication, but where I didn't know the reasons why, that made it a lot harder.
Yeah.
And then in 2019, when I was diagnosed, it was like, it gave such a clear understanding of myself. So over the years, just naturally, I've got to understand myself better. So while I find it easier now, there were lots of things that I was struggling with at that time, where it was like, okay, I need to push myself to like email all of these people and in order to take things further.
Yeah.
But I was really struggling with that, so the momentum just kind of died down.
This first one is called Unhealthy Substitute. Unhealthy substitute for a lack of pride. I can barely sleep when I close my eyes. Struggling to breathe, hold me down, bars and screams in the dark of the night. You can try, but it hurts. It never did seem worth it. You can try, but it hurts. I don't think you deserve it. 'Cause we were burning, burning. I couldn't see if she was hurting. Yeah, we were burning, burning. I couldn't see if she was hurting.
Your music is unique. I wonder, just as a bit of a technical question, whether, I know you said that you were having some challenges translating like what you wanted to do, what you wanted to sound like to producers, so kind of went to working on your own. And some other people might not even be in the position where they have someone that is able to facilitate them doing it. But I wonder whether that kind of either challenge, like communicating with someone else or not having that possibility, means that, yeah, while you need to figure it out yourself, something more novel comes from it because you haven't necessarily got that training, so you're kind of playing around. Do you think there's an aspect of that?
Yeah, definitely. It's like when people ask me what genre of music I make, I never know how to categorize it. And I always kind of just say like alternative, experimental, because it really is like a whole experiment. So it's like, in doing so, it's like, forget the rules. And this is just going from what I'm feeling in the moment or I'm playing around with. And then something comes from that and it kind of builds from there. And then I'm able to draw influences from things outside of music. So just my interests, like philosophy, that kind of thing. And so it just really feels like me when I do that. And so I definitely do feel like that has been the case. It's just been about like finding a balance between like trying to do that and enjoy it. And I think what it was is for a period of time I was putting pressure on myself, like, oh, I need to release music and I need to finish this and finish this. So then it became like I'm trying to do all of these things within a time limit. And so I'm kind of stopping that creativity. I think it's just this like feeling of like burnout, I guess, like just doing everything and then not sort of enjoying the experimentation. Like,
is that pressure coming internally or is it from external sense of like what you should be doing?
I definitely feel like it's internally. I do feel like in a sense there is an external pressure for artists. I feel like if you want to be a certain artist or have a certain music career, but I do feel like for myself, the goal has never been to, like, I enjoy performance, so I would love to perform continuously, but the goal has always been more so to build, like, create community, like, with my music. Because a lot of the stuff is not really intentional, but I found that a lot of my lyrics and the stuff that I ended up writing about was about like human connection and just feeling like I'm trying to bring people together in a time where it feels like everything's very detached and like isolated. I think that kind of like came from like my interest in philosophy and like that idea of what it means to be human, that kind of thing. So I feel like while I do love music and I love making it and stuff, it's like it's never been like my passion in the sense of, oh, I want to be this kind of artist. So that pressure of like, oh, I need to release, I think came from within of like, I suddenly kind of got swept up in the whole like, oh, this is what you need to do in order to be an artist. But then when I actually take a step back, really it's more just like my own pressures of like, I want to be continuously moving forward and not feeling stagnant.
Do you think that's like maybe one of the signifiers of, I'm not saying that you went to an organization that was doing this, but of some programs that you could go to where it's like, this is this kind of like familiar way, this is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not necessarily the most helpful thing. I guess just from thinking from my perspective, the most helpful thing would be facilitators, whoever's running the programs, like speaking to that person, what do you want from this, right?
Exactly.
And then helping them to realize that, as opposed to being prescriptive about you've got to do this and that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's so important to recognize that everybody's individual, so they don't all want the same thing. And in doing that, in like sitting down with each person, it's like you're actually going to help them like kind of get what they actually want out of it. And I think that would be way more beneficial in the long run, because for some people that could look like, oh, I want to go on to do this, this and this. Or for some people it might be like, I want to create this piece of work and I don't necessarily want this piece of work to go anywhere, but that's still valuable to them.
That, or the ones that you've spoken about that has been like really beneficial for you.
Yeah, I feel like particularly with raw material, what was beneficial was that it wasn't overly structured. So it was like you come here at this set time. It was like say it was like 6 to 8. you start the evening with like all being in a circle and introducing yourself, but then you can just disperse into like people will be all over the building. Sometimes I'd find myself just sitting on the staircase with the guitar, and that was okay. Whereas we like go into other things over the years where they've been super structured and you have to be here at this time and like you have to do this and all these kind of rules where it just felt like I wasn't able to get the best out of myself, because if I wasn't feeling particularly maybe brave, I don't know the right word, but like in the right headspace, I guess, then I kind of would just shut down and be quiet and not really engage that much. Whereas if that was a situation where I was more open, like in non-material, I could just go and take myself away, and then that would probably give me the confidence to rejoin. I've been to so many different programs over the years, and I think this is really what's like led to me wanting to create my own kind of workshops, because I feel like what I've done over the years is like my own sort of evaluation of places and like what I feel like works and what really doesn't work. And obviously it is individual, but having conversations recently with people, it's like, okay, there's a lot of shared experience here. I guess people can only go so far, but at the same time, I do feel like there's so much more that can be done to make things more, not only inclusive, but just to make sure like people are getting the best out of everyone. And I feel like, yeah, that's what I'm realizing. And in creating this documentary is what I'm realizing is like really needed.
For me, for example, like maybe I'd feel apprehensive to go to like, this group thing where you feel maybe a bit of social anxiety, a bit uncomfortable, especially if already you're like maybe struggling a little bit. Like, what do you think makes you feel comfortable and able to both go, but then to be yourself and to try and realize like the creative ideas and get the value from it?
Yeah.
And that be the primary thing, as opposed to like having to focus too much on like feeling at least just like comfortable being there.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like what that would look like for me is kind of like, for example, in the start, when you're doing like introductions and stuff, maybe even before you attending the groups or something, maybe it's a thing where it's like you meet the facilitator, or even just in terms of like what I've really struggled with in the past is, I don't know if this is just me, but like when they do icebreakers and say they do like memory-based ones where you have to remember people's names, like that straight away has immediately thrown me off. And I'm like focusing so much on the fact that I struggle to remember names that I'm now immediately like feeling so uncomfortable that I'm sort of thrown off from the start, that kind of thing. And I feel like a big thing is like the people who are creating the courses or facilitating the courses, of them having an awareness and an understanding. Because even now when like I do training or I speak to people, I feel like people know about neurodiversity, but still there's like a big gap in people understanding how it affects different people. And I do feel like if like the things that I'm talking about in terms of creating a certain environment where people feel more like safe and like they're part of something, I feel like that would benefit everyone. So I feel like it's not just a thing where it's like, oh, it's only going to help people who are neurodivergent. I feel like it's something like, as humans, to create a nice, comfortable space, people will thrive.
Agree. I feel like it's kind of an old school idea as well, that knowing someone's name brings them closer to someone. I don't feel close to someone if I know their name. I feel closer to someone if I feel comfortable in their presence, and like have a sense of who they are. And like, so, and I'm with you, like my memory for names is poor, but I remember faces, and like, yeah, I could connect in different ways. I don't think that's the best icebreaker.
Yeah.
What would you think would be a way in a icebreaker situation when you first meet a ton of people, where you would feel like, you mentioned like talking to a facilitator before, if you've done that and you feel like, okay, I feel comfortable to go into that environment.
Yeah.
And I guess part of it's like knowing that person has heard you and has a sense of what you need. But yeah, in the group situation, what could they do to make you feel comfortable?
Just thinking about it now, I feel like the kind of things where it's like sharing your interests, so icebreakers where it's like, oh, well, what's the last thing you listened to, that kind of thing, gets everyone to open up, but it doesn't feel so pressured where it's like your responsibility to, like, often it can be like, oh, let me feedback what the person I was speaking to was saying, that kind of thing. Whereas I feel like that is a good way to connect and stuff, but it adds a lot of pressure where it's like, rather than listening to the person and what they're saying, I'm thinking of how I'm going to remember what they're saying so I can feed it back to the rest of the group.
Yeah.
And then I'm not actually connecting with that person on any level at all. So I feel like, just...
That's a memory test as far more than anything.
Exactly.
Because you're just focused on that. Can I remember exactly what they're saying so I can say Shakira like da-da-da-da-da-da, and like, it's a memory test more than like a connection with them.
Yeah. So I think, anything that, I'm not really sure exactly, but anything that I feel like actually creates connection or just kind of eases into.
I like that idea, like of like speaking to something you're really into, because like most people like talking about things that they're passionate about in that moment, and likely in that group there's going to be someone that's like, I'm also really into that person as well at the moment. That's cool. And then you can potentially go towards that person and like build a relationship based on that.
Somehow I'm breathing whilst I'm still bleeding, and I know it hurts, but don't know what's what. Oh, you're too floods, the truth hurts while you so ruthless, and the noise is so loud. You just want to get out. Death seems so appealing, never quite got the meaning. I know I was determined.
Being neurodivergent, or let's call it neurodivergent characteristics, because like you say, you, me, lots of people only kind of have this recognition, I think, later in life, but the experiences have been there for a lifetime, and it can be really helpful, I think, I'll speak for myself, to be able to reduce that blame of yourself, that like things aren't necessarily working out, or there's not these kind of challenges because there's something inherently wrong with you, and also to identify, okay, well, what do you need, and be able to like interact with people on that basis. I wonder what some of the challenges, if you don't mind like speaking to them, that you, prior to diagnosis, you experienced in terms of trying to like realize some of these goals. And then, like, I guess a bit of a sub-question, since kind of having this recognition and understanding more about autism and ADHD and like the related behaviors and ways of thinking, like, what have you been able to do to kind of make those more manageable?
Things I really struggled with before. So on one side, it's like I struggled with the with people. So it's like, I guess ironic, the fact that I'm constantly thinking about human interaction and stuff, but I guess not. I guess it makes sense because I feel like I often felt like an outsider. And so when it's like you kind of want to either build a team or like people saying you need to network and kind of that kind of sense, it's like it felt really like an impossible task.
I feel like, just really quickly, I feel like neurodivergent people can be or autistic people maybe in particular can be the best sociologists, because we struggle in those situations. We're always having to analyze it, try and understand how these things work, how these interactions work, how people are working. So we think a lot about the details of those things. So yeah, it makes, and yeah, if you take it and you kind of use that in a positive way, that you want to take that information and bring people to use it positively, right?
Exactly. And I think I always find it interesting when I look back at A-level, I'd done English language, psychology, philosophy, and human biology. And I was like, yeah, okay, I clearly just wanted to get a grasp on like everything human related and like what kind of brings us together. But yeah, I really like to be like my alone time and that kind of like safe space of being home and that. So I feel like when it comes to networking and going out and like going to gigs and building a community and that kind of aspect, I did always feel like I'm stunning my own growth in that sense. But then another big thing which I still struggle with to today, but before being diagnosed, it was really bad, which was like, I really need a routine in order to get anything done. But I really, on the other side, I really struggle with routine. And like, so it's like a mixture between two sides of me battling together, trying to get a task done. And it's like I need tidiness and like everything to be in order. But then at the same time, my brain is feeling a bit chaotic. So I felt very stuck. There's been lots of times where it's like, I just have felt frozen for a long time. And then that kind of led to me feeling like I just wasn't good enough. Not necessarily just within music, just in general. Like, why am I not progressing? It felt very different from school, where I guess you had that structure and it was all I ever knew. So I just kind of went and done it because I had to. But then from leaving that and just having less of a structure, it was like, yeah, why am I not progressing in anything? Even though I know that I'm capable, like I really do I believe in myself in that sense. So yeah, I guess that brought up a lot of challenges and like with self-esteem and that kind of thing. And then when I was diagnosed, it just made so much sense. It was like, okay, this makes sense of why I have felt like an outsider so much. Because what happened for a long time is like, I didn't feel human in a way. And I guess that's probably why I write so much about like that kind of what it means to be human and stuff. Because I didn't really feel like I was human. I felt like I was just different in all aspects. But then understanding myself better was like, okay, it gave me the basis to move. I didn't know everything yet, and I didn't necessarily understand myself fully when I was first diagnosed. But it was like, okay, at least this makes sense. And then from there, I still was struggling in terms of like creating a routine and getting tasks done and that kind of stuff. What was really hard is like, I don't know what support I need. So it's like all and good being like, oh, maybe get like a tutor or that kind of thing. But it's like, my experience of tutors in the past has been like, they try to help me in a certain way, which is really the opposite of what I need, but I can't kind of express what it is that I need.
You think understanding more about autism and ADHD helped you to understand like what it is, identify what it is that you need to kind of overcome and work with like your own?
Yeah, I feel like it has, but it's still an ongoing journey.
Yeah, 100%.
I feel like this past maybe 2 years, or maybe even this past year, let's go with, where I've been working for a charity, what I found worked for me is like, I use calendars, like color-coded calendars, and like I use like Google Tasks and create lists and all that kind of stuff, which really works for me, even though like, because I feel like I need that as a basis, because otherwise everything would be all jumbled and I wouldn't get much done. So that has helped in terms of like keeping to a routine, whereas before it would be like I create a timetable and I'd just not stick to it because I'm not breaking down the tasks kind of thing. But for instance, now I still struggle with, while I've got better at sending emails and stuff and I don't really have to think too much about it, it's understanding that from day to day, like being autistic affects me, can change from day to day, and same with ADHD. So there's times where I might be so overwhelmed that I can't like physically speak. And that's really not helpful when I need to coordinate something or I want to do things like apply for Arts Council funding. And then you can get someone to help you with that. But then it's like, I don't know what exactly to say. So then that, going through with this often stops me from progressing it. The same within like my music, that thing of like, I've been in positions where people have been like, oh yeah, we can like help you, we want to manage you, but just finish this, and this. But it's I need the help to finish this, and this in order to move forward.
Did you like ever say to them, oh, I need some help to be able to do this, and this? Or do you think in those situations, potentially, like, it doesn't feel like the done thing to say, like, actually, I need your help to do this,
Yeah,
this?
I think at that time, I definitely didn't say it. And I think it came from a place of not wanting to, just feeling like awkward in knowing what I can and can't ask for, I guess.
Yeah.
And not wanting to like be too much of a burden in a way, that kind of thing. I feel like now I have more of a grounding within myself to know that it's like, I'm well within my right to just ask. There's no harm in asking for support. But I think at that time, it just felt very much like, oh, I will lose this opportunity.
Yeah, that asking for that help or like signify to them that actually maybe they made the wrong decision and you're not capable. Yeah. But really, like, it's the you that got you into that position. Your unique skills in creativity got you that place. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm curious, like, in terms of the networking, I'm going to do a program like specifically on network, because I think in a lot of creative industries, it seems like such a fundamental part, like who you know and how you can kind of create those connections and stuff to gain opportunities. If, for example, like just that kind of cold going up to someone and trying to start a conversation, or small talk, what's termed as small talk is difficult. Like, that can be a limiting factor. It can stop you maybe going to events that maybe you would want to go, or again, I'll speak from my own experience, that maybe you would want to go to or you'd be interested in and might provide opportunities. What in those instances do you think could help, allow you to kind of create those connections, but in a way that felt like gratifying and like good to you?
The thing is, I that's a really good question. I feel like I struggle with this because since the pandemic, I have discovered that I really thrive better face to face, just because having to do stuff over Zoom and that kind of stuff. And I don't know what happened as well. Like, with texting, even with my friends post pandemic, I just find it really hard. I just really can't put my thoughts into texting. So it's like, I used to not like phone calls and now I love phone calls. So I don't really know, because it's like, I find networking can be daunting, but then I think at the space where I'm at now, I find it a lot easier than online communication, which for some people could be an easier way of doing things. Like,
I wonder if it's not even about the medium, like whether it's not even about it's some person or not. It's just about that maybe that this is like the basis to gain opportunities, this being such a fundamental part of it, which is about maybe like a certain type of communication.
Yeah.
Because even if it's in person or on like Zoom, it's the same. Maybe expectations of the way that you talk or aren't necessarily aligned with like how everyone feels comfortable interacting, or I don't know. It's tricky to fight against that internally in your mind, to remind yourself to just be you.
Yeah. That's a really good point. I do feel like I have been in a lot of spaces where I end up completely masking, and so it's like I'm not really being my true self anyway. So then I leave thinking, like, where I might have made a connection, I don't feel like I can continue that connection because it feels draining to be someone who I wasn't really, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think creating a space in terms of networking, creating an environment where even before people get there, it's like more relaxed in a sense. I think that would be cool.
Can I just ask something quickly about mental health?
Yeah.
Like, I've also had challenges with mental health, and like prior to receiving diagnoses, in between, like 10 years ago, I got an ADHD diagnosis, but without the kind of understanding of ADHD, it doesn't really help. I think you have to both be offered this information, but also be willing at a point where you're willing to kind of like, there's a lot of like, you have to be ready to kind of dive in and understand yourself and etc. I wonder, in terms of mental health, how much of challenges do you think come as a result of like not understanding yourself and these kind of characteristics and ways of thinking that are a result of like a mind that is maybe different from the norm, and then kind of like the challenges of existing in a world like I feel personally like the mental health challenges are a symptom really of kind of like not identifying, recognizing and having needs met.
100%, and I can clearly see that with hindsight now. Because it's my mental health journey kind of like, it started off with psychotic depression. And I honestly feel like that was a result of going so long bottling things up and not feeling human. And so therefore leaning into that thought of like, okay, I'm not human. So then there's feeling paranoid, that sense of paranoia, that sense of mistrust from poor treatment in school and the healthcare system as well. Just kind of all added to that, I feel. And it makes sense to me. And it's like since understanding myself better, the more grounded I feel. And while I might still have challenges with certain things, it's like I am grounded in who I am. So it's like I find it easier to face that. But yeah, definitely I do feel like the mental health is more of a, like, has come as a result of those things.
Yeah, that's where I feel like maybe to widen it to society, like better understanding neurodivergent experiences, not necessarily needing to identify who's neurodivergent or not, just society accepting and recognizing different things suit different people behave in different ways, can like mitigate those mental health challenges like manifesting in the first place to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And just like let people lead more gratifying lives for like a longer time from an earlier point.
Exactly.
Accepted and less of an outsider.
Because it started from probably like primary school. And it's like, now that I know I'm neurodivergent, it's like I've always been neurodivergent. But right from primary school, the kind of putting me in a box based on certain characteristics, and then all throughout school, but then even in like the healthcare system, like being misdiagnosed with like different things because you're basing me on these things, and then that results in not getting the support that I need to. Yeah, definitely.
Keep screaming, heavy dreaming, blowing up this empty truth. What's the use? Endless lies and fragile minds reflect on you. We don't really give enough. We're running out of love. We don't really give enough. We're running out of love.
In terms of now, like, is music still a big focus? And I guess if so, like, what do you want from it?
I feel like the past 2 years, I have taken a big break from making music. But that has really just been a result of like what I've been saying in terms of just feeling like it's like I have all these ideas. I have like the music in a sense, but I can't really get it to that end goal because I need a team, but I need to be able to communicate to that team. So I feel like I've taken a break from that while I've been doing like working in music education kind of stuff. But I would like to, I don't think it's the end for me in terms of music. I feel like I would like to fall back in love with the process of creating without necessarily a goal. Because for a long time I actually felt like being working class and having certain experiences when I was younger, I felt like, okay, so I've dropped out of uni now and I'm going to struggle to go back because of what I was experiencing at the time. So it felt like music was like my only way out, if that makes sense. Like this is the only way I'm going to be able to like facilitate my dreams or pay the things or whatever. And that was a pressure, I guess, where it was like, oh, okay, I need to do this. Now I've taken all of that away and like I can do, there's other routes to music, to like working in music, which I've since discovered of like working in music education. And then so now I want to just get back to making music for the fun of it. And if that led to something, that's great. But for now, that's not really my kind of goal, except I really do love performing. So yeah, I still will perform.
What do you like about performing?
I think it's that I remember the first time I ever performed, which was like at Raw Material, and my hands were literally shaking. But then I think over time it was like a space where in the world I kind of throughout my life have felt like a bit of an outsider. And so when I was on stage by myself, it felt like I was holding my own space and people were listening to me. And I didn't feel listened to often. So it felt like I've finally got a space to express myself and people are taking it in. And I think with my music as well, it's quite, I guess, emotional and deep. There's a lot of depth to it. So I feel like often it's like the crowd is like silent and really taking in the lyrics. So yeah, having that space where I can speak and just be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been really nice.
So that was my conversation with Shakira. I think her journey highlights many of the barriers that neurodivergent creatives face when it comes to communicating their vision and navigating systems that weren't necessarily designed with differing needs in mind. It's also interesting to me how Shakira spoke about having belief in her own talent and her own vision, but not necessarily how to realize it or what support would be necessary to assist in that. That very much resonates with me. What also stood out to me was the proactive nature that Shakira took in terms of seeking out organizations that could help support her creative journey. So Raw Material provided a place for her to develop her interest in producing music, also a platform to discover how performing can provide a space for her own unique voice and perspective to be presented and heard, and this kind of sense of feeling seen. And I think for me and maybe other neurodivergent artists, the production of music or having that space where you have a semblance of control and able to convey to others your creative vision and your perspective on the world is one of the reasons that so many neurodivergent people are creative people seeking work in creative industries. There's something really powerful, I think, about Shakira talking about how those programs that actually worked for her were spaces where she felt that there wasn't a pressure to kind of perform in a traditional way. We talked about different ways that one could have an icebreaker event that didn't rely on things like memory and put pressure on one to remember things, and instead allowed them to really just lean into listening and kind of genuinely connecting with someone, as opposed to it feeling like a kind of test. And for those of us that are neurodivergent, there's also a reminder in what Shakira shared about the importance of self-understanding and learning to advocate for what we need, and having that courage to be able to recognize, okay, I feel that asking for help for this might not be expected, and there's a potential that that will influence the way that someone perceives me, but that if they're really an ally, really genuinely want to support and see you thrive, then they're going to accommodate that. They're going to be grateful that one shared what they need so that they can help you get ahead. And a reminder, Neurodiversity in Music, Improving Access is screening at Rich Mix in Bethnal Green on Monday the 20th of January at 5:45. That's 2015 if you're listening to this beyond that. There'll be a Q&A afterwards with Shakira, and yeah, I'm very much looking forward to that. So thanks for listening and thanks for watching. I've been Sam. I didn't say that at the beginning. I still am Sam, and I'll see you next week for another episode of Working to Work.